Hello, all, and welcome to the Triple H podcast, Happy Hour Hoops, your one-stop shop for enjoying a cold beverage and listening to our ice-cold basketball takes. Today, we have a special episode, a little Sunday matinee Happy Hour Hoops, afternoon college hoops talks on a Sunday, the last Sunday before March starts. So that means the madness will begin soon. Dunny and Jake, as always, and joined by a reoccurring guest, Stevie, our college basketball expert here. I'm going to be playing a lot of host today, throwing some lobs to Stevie because he knows much more about college hoops than I. And we're going to get right into this. We can start with a historic day that we had yesterday in college.
Bro, yesterday was fucking crazy.
Insane. 7 top 10 teams lose, 1 through 6 all lose. And I think that sums up the beauty of what this college basketball season has been. To where last year, I know it happened, you guys once last year, more closer towards the tournament, where I was telling you there were 2 teams that were separated from the rest. It was Gonzaga and Baylor. It was Gonzaga and Baylor. It didn't matter. This year, yes, it's really tough to put 2 teams above the rest. I think there is a group of a dozen teams right now that can all make cases, that all have their own specific weaknesses, that all have their own strengths to make a deep run in March. And I'm very curious for these next 2 weeks, with the conference tournament starting up, because that's when we're going to learn more about these teams. You have, playing back-to-back days against elite competition night after night. You're really going to see which teams kind of come out on top. Because right now, guys, I don't really think there's 1 or 2 teams that I'm completely in love with. There's a lot of teams I like, but there's a lot of teams I have concerns on. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks. I can't wait for it personally, because I think this tournament, we could see a chalk Final Four, or we could see absolute chaos, and those are my favorite type of years.
Yeah, it's not really like last year where it was kind of Gonzaga, Baylor all year long, and
they were beating teams by 20 a game.
Yeah,
like every single night.
Every night. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of that, let's get into Gonzaga then, Dunny, because they're one of these teams we got to talk about today.
The number 1 seed lost, along with a lot of other top teams who lost yesterday. Gonzaga, Stevie, what do you got here? No panic for you? Panic, or what are we thinking here?
It's hard to say panic, right, when the top 6 teams all lost. It's hard to say panic on all of them. First, before we dive into Gonzaga, I want to give credit to St. Mary's. They finally did it. They finally beat Gonzaga at home. They needed this. This is a huge win for them. For the past, 5 or so years, St. Mary's has been that bubble team that never has that big win that pushes them over the edge. It's always like they're waiting at the end. Do we get in? Do we not? They beat Gonzaga here. St. Mary's locked into the tournament. Congratulations to them. Huge win over a team that they've struggled with the past couple of years. For Gonzaga, I think 57 points is a little bit concerning against St. Mary's.
That's the shocking thing, I think, of the whole box score. Like, that's all you have to look at. This is a Gonzaga team, right, Stevie, that puts up like 80, 90 easy,
well,
especially
that's the thing.
Against this competition.
the past 3 or 4 years, this Gonzaga team scoring 85, 90 points at will. They were averaging, I think, over 90 points in their conference games this year. They're gifted offensively, 2nd overall in the country in adjusted offense. To see them only put up 57. Now, St. Mary's is a solid defensive team, but that is a little bit concerning here. And it kind of goes back to my biggest concern probably a couple months ago about Gonzaga is, can I trust their guards come tournament time? They got a bunch of solid guards. You got Julian Strother, Andrew Nemhard, and Rasir Bolton, who are all, they can stretch the floor. They can play fast. They can all shoot the outside shot. But unlike last year where they had Jalen Suggs, who could take over the game if they needed someone to, where their offense wasn't working. Because Gonzaga plays a style of offense where I bring back similar to the Spurs days, where they had Popovich, where they're just getting guys open looks. They're playing quick. They're playing a lot of off-ball movement, getting guys wide open, and that's how Gonzaga likes to play. They like to run the floor. They like to share the ball. Almost every possession, you'll see almost everyone on the court will touch the ball for Gonzaga. But they don't have that guy like Suggs when that's not working. They're like, all right, we need this guy to take over. They don't really have that. Their best player is obviously Chet Holmgren, the freshman. Everyone's been talking about him this year. He looks like the most unique basketball player we've seen in a while. 7'1", tall frame. His wingspan's enormous. He's as skinny can be. He's skinnier than any of us. I mean, he's built like a twig, but he can dribble. He can play off the ball. He can dribble off the ball, create his own shot. Great inside defense with his wingspan for blocking. I like Chet Holmgren a lot. He's a very unique player. It's going to be very hard for teams to match up with a player like his. But is Chet Holmgren going to be a guy?
Game is disgusting.
It's incredible. We got another guy, I think, on Auburn who averages over a block more than that per game.
Yeah.
But Holmgren he's very unique in my mind. Is he someone that can score 25, 30 if they need him in the tournament? I don't know. And then we got Drew Timme, the other big guy. Everyone loved Drew Timme from the run last year, but my biggest concern with Drew Timme, and it's been the biggest concern every year with Timme, when he matches up with someone as big as him, who's stronger than him, a little more athletic, is he gonna, he rise up to the challenge? He hasn't really in the past, and he kind of got lucky because he faced a lot of teams that were smaller than him where he could dominate inside. His post moves are elite. That will never change. But on the defensive side, I'll tell you what, guys, the other elite teams this year, they have a lot of good big men. It's going to be a big challenge for Timme. And that's my biggest concern for Gonzaga is last year they were able to dominate defensively down low and offensively down low with Timme. This year, it's a bigger challenge with the elite big men across all the top teams. I mean, you look at the top 10 teams this year, the main thing they have in common, almost every single one of them has a guy down low.
What is up with that? When does this happen in college basketball where everyone has their own set?
Everybody's got dudes, bro.
It's crazy.
Dudes are everywhere.
It's actually crazy. And that's my biggest concern with Gonzaga, because last year I was like, they have the advantage down low. And this year they kind of do with Holmgren. Exactly, except against Baylor, because Baylor wasn't even that much bigger than them. They were just strong. They were just a physical team.
Yeah,
there is a team that reminds me of Baylor. We can get to that later.
We'll get to them. Yeah, we'll get to them. One of the things about Gonzaga, you said everything that worries me about Gonzaga this year.
Yeah,
like you tied that into a beautiful bow because you've watched more of them than I have this year. But from what I've watched this year, Timme and Holmgren are incredible, and you can do that against the competition they play in their conference. But the guard play is not consistent enough. And when you get to March, what is it you need in March? It is a guard. It is the lead guard who can take over a game. Elite guard play. And you can see a scenario. I think this is the tea leaves. This is the foreshadowing with the 57 points. Is that against a good team? This is a good St. Mary's team. This is one of their better. They're always good. They're always the best competition for Gonzaga. But this is a really good team this year.
Yes.
And when they played a good competition, this is a game that could happen against any of the 5 teams that lost yesterday too for Gonzaga. Just and exactly what you said too. It's the athleticism that they lack. That Auburn, Arizona, all these teams behind them, I think have an athleticism advantage over Gonzaga, just because of the athletes they have. So it's going to be interesting to see. Because this team is there, everybody wants us to like this. Eventually this team will break through. Is this going to be the year that it happens? I don't know. It looks iffy because I don't know. Not iffy, but you know what I mean.
I was more inclined last year to say that was the year they break through. And it really was. They just ran into a buzzsaw with Baylor. And we kind of said it last year. With that Baylor team at its peak, no one's beating them. Davion, Butler. I mean, that team was so much fun.
They were great.
This year with Gonzaga, the biggest concern, they have 2 concerns, right? And I think you brought it up before the show too, Jake. Chet Holmgren, great player. He can get into foul trouble a lot. And if he gets into foul trouble in the tournament, that's a big game. A huge concern. Because now you have Timme, who has to play against these other elite big men. There's so many teams that have elite big men this year that can match up against Timme and kind of dominate him. And Gonzaga's bench is just weak. It's not like last year where they could pull guys off the bench and just plug them in. They don't really have much depth, and it's really inexperienced. A couple freshmen off the bench, the best one being Hunter Salas. And then Anton Watson is usually the guy they'll throw in if Holmgren.
I do like Watson. I think he can create a little bit, but they don't give him a lot of opportunities to create. That's the thing. And
he's a little undersized.
And he's a little chaotic too. He does have a little chaos to him, but
he's a little undersized. He's a little unpredictable. And he's also a type of guy where you just kind of get worried on the offensive end. What's he going to do when he gets the ball? With Timmy and Holmgren, one thing I really like about Timmy and Holmgren, I loved about Timmy last year, he gets the ball in the paint. He's immediately looking to try to kick it out to someone on the wing, someone to get a shot. Timmy is a great, playmaker for a big man. Watson, not really that. And Chet has really improved from the start of the year to now in terms of his playmaking abilities and everything else. I like Gonzaga, but I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit on them making a deep run this year, just because if they get matched up against a team that can match up with their size, it could be a big problem.
You know who else I think they're missing a lot this year? I know I'm kind of backtracking a bit, but we talked about Jalen Suggs, and they do have some shooters this year, but I feel like they're missing Kispert a lot too.
Yeah.
Elite shooter. Elite.
You talked about the experience too. I mean, like he just I feel like anytime in big games, like Kispert was kind of that steady hand. They had Jalen Suggs, who was the athletic guard. They had Timmy and the solid big man, but Kispert kind of just tied everything together for that group. I feel like they have shooters, they have guys who can knock down open shots this year, but you really miss a guy like that too.
Yeah, and Kispert was someone who could almost like create his own shot too. In college, he doesn't really do that as much in the NBA because it's a little harder.
But he was pretty good at taking like a screen from Timmy. Taking a screen from Timmy and coming around and like pulling up from the dribble like that. Like he was very, very good at that last year. I agree.
And I will say Rasir Bolton could be a big X factor. He can shoot lights out. He can't create his own shot. And I like Nembhard a lot. I wish Nembhard would have taken a bigger step forward. I really thought he was going to be the guard, not as good as Suggs was last year, but kind of come into that role a little bit more. He hasn't completely. But those are still guys. I mean, you never know. We've seen players take steps come postseason basketball. Maybe that could be it. We'll see.
That's true. This is a team that's built by it.
Real quick before we move on from Gonzaga, I know we talked about this a little before we hopped on, and you gave some interesting NBA comparisons for our guy Chet here. I want you to talk a little bit about that. What do you see once Chet's done at Gonzaga? What is his future like in the NBA? Because ultimately, I mean, we think he's making it there. He's probably going to be a high pick soon enough.
He should be a top 5 pick, would be my guess.
Yeah.
My biggest thing for Chet, he's got to hit the weight room, gain about 20 pounds of muscle. He can't get away with that come the NBA. His size, I mean, he just get dominated down low by these NBA bigs if he doesn't gain the weight. But he has one of the most unique frames for basketball. He's a 7'1" guy who can dribble. Like he can score off the dribble at 7'1". That's very rare to see. He's a lot quicker than the other, 7-footers in the NBA who can make their own plays. Embiid, Jokic. Those guys usually do it with their big frame, the spin, get open. Chet can just go right by you. He's quick. He's got a long wingspan, and he's very athletic. The big thing with him is you just got to get a little bit more muscle on him. I consider him kind of like Porzingis because he can shoot the outside shot.
Yeah,
he can make his own play, but he's a bit more gifted in terms of basketball skills than I think Porzingis will be. He can dribble a lot better. He's a better playmaker. So I said a Porzingis, Jaren Jackson kind of hybrid because Jackson's not the tallest guy in the world, but if you watch Jackson, he plays like he's 7 foot at times, and he can shoot the ball offensively. He can move off the dribble. I kind of like Holmgren as a mix between those two, but until he can get to that point, he's got to just put some muscle on, put some weight on, feed him, give him some cheeseburgers, make him work out.
Go to Shake Shack.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I mean, because he's got he's got the hard part done already. He's got the basketball skills, and he's 7'1". Yeah. Like you don't see that every day.
He takes 3 strides and can go from basket to basket.
Exactly.
So is he basically diet Evan Mobley? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. I actually don't hate that comparison. I wanted to say Evan Mobley, but it's kind of hard to compare to a guy who's only been in the league for a little over half a year. I
mean from last year, even.
Coming out as a prospect, but I think that's a very fair comparison. Mobley was a little bit stronger, and I think Holmgren's a little bit more gifted.
And Mobley's a little bit more defensive. Yeah, Mobley's a little bit better defensively, I would say.
Definitely. Mobley at his peak could be a top 5 defender in the NBA in a few years. I don't think Holmgren will ever get there, but he has the wingspan to make up for it.
He could, and he won't. Yeah, he could be not a sieve. That's basically what.
Exactly. He's not.
Can we make fun of Arizona for a couple minutes? Because
we can try.
Jake's been dying to do this.
I want to make fun of Purdue way more than I do Arizona. But Arizona is this team. And Stevie, I love that your note is exactly what I'm saying, because I'm always an anti-Arizona guy, because this feels like every Arizona team for the last 15 years. So what is the difference with this? This is the thing with Arizona that I think all year, they split obviously with UCLA so far this year. But when it comes down to Pac-12 tournament time, and when it comes down to tournament time, I'm picking UCLA over Arizona every single time in those one game scenarios at this point. Is there anything that I'm missing there on that, as we're looking at the Pac-12 as a whole and Arizona as a contender for the national title?
Arizona is a weird one to me because I like you said, I'm always anti-Arizona guy. So at the beginning of the year, I'm like, I don't really care about Arizona. I'll tune into them when they start impressing me, and they just kept winning. They just kept playing well.
They did.
And they're an interesting team because they're pretty balanced. They're 11th in offensive efficiency, 13th in defensive efficiency, and they play fast. They're at the 6th fastest pace of any team in college basketball right now.
That's true.
And it's weird to see a team play quick like that, but also have a very good defense like they do. And a lot of it is because they have, guess what, guys, a ton of size. We're going to see a theme with a lot of these teams. Arizona, a ton of size. You got Koloko, Tubelis, and Abalo, who are all, I believe, 7 foot tall, just big dudes down low, can get boards. They're not the most gifted offensive players, but they can get boards, dominate inside the paint. Arizona, to me, the biggest concern is their perimeter scoring. They're 132nd right now in three-point shooting. And outside of three-point shooting, they don't really score much outside of the paint besides 2 players, and that's Benedict Bethurum, who's one of the top prospects right now, and then Kerr Kriisa. Great name, Kerr Kriisa. All these names this year are just fantastic.
They are great names too. I can't wait to hear.
You won't know how to
Nance
spell half of them, but they're fantastic names. And obviously, people in college basketball, I think the hardest thing is to learn names. As the tournament starts, the conference tournaments and the NCAA tournament, that's when the common college basketball fans will learn all the names, put a name with the face. Arizona, they got 2 guys who can score on the outside, Bethurum and Kriisa. That's really all it is. And if either of those guys go cold or get in foul trouble, it could be a big problem for them. They have so much size to make up for it, because as fast as they play, it's tough to score on them. It really is. Arizona has just too much size inside the paint. And I like Benedict a lot. He's averaging 17, 5, and 2. He's made 63s this year, and he's got great size for a guard. He's 6'6", long wingspan, super athletic, and he can score from anywhere. His biggest concern, though, he doesn't really make the players around him better. And when you have a guy like that, if they don't really have any other answers offensively who starts to take over like he can, he's going to start getting doubled. He's going to get bumped a little bit in these games, and he's got to be a little bit better of a playmaker. He reminds me almost like an Andrew Wiggins, Chris Middleton, where he can shoot. He can create his own shot. He's very gifted offensively, okay defender, but he's got to find a way to make his teammates better. Arizona,
you don't want him to create for other people, is what you're kind of saying.
Right,
you
exactly.
Don't want him to be
and that's
creator in that position.
That's the biggest, I think, concern for me with Arizona is the rest of their scoring just comes inside the paint. And we talked about this with Gonzaga. You're going to face teams that can match up with your size and your athleticism in the paint for all these elite teams. And even if you have an easy road the first couple of weeks in March Madness, you're going to face one of these teams eventually. So Arizona also too, they always choke in March, guys. They always fall apart. And this may be biased because I got my Buffalo shirt on. Buffalo shut down DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Harris. We'll never forget that unbelievable game.
It was a great moment.
But it feels like a little bit of a different team for Arizona. I just until they finally prove to me they can string together some wins in March.
No. Stevie, we're not picking them. We're not picking Arizona.
I'm not picking them. No,
when we get to bracket shows, I'm telling you, I'm picking Arizona to get upset in the round of 32. Like, I can already see it in my bracket. Like, I can see I'm sliding in whatever 7 seed they're gonna play in the second round. 100%, I'm picking them. Like, there's no doubt in my mind.
You got to make sure though, if they do face an undersized team, they will dominate them. Arizona against a team that can't match up their size, they will dominate you. They will swarm you.
And
I
that's why
cannot believe what you're gonna say about Purdue, Jake. If you have worse stuff for Purdue and you're going at Zona like this is gonna be good.
See, Arizona has Arizona. My Arizona hate was more of a Sean Miller hate, and that he's obviously not a part of the organization anymore. The university anymore. But I think that it still feels like this team does not feel any different than any Arizona team that I've seen in the past. I've been burned by Arizona too many times. As a former, I would say I've also as a former. I'm not a Duke fan anymore, but growing up, I was a Duke fan. I would say JJ Redick lured me in those couple years. Big loss to Arizona. To Derek Williams. Never will forgive them for that. I could never. That game. That game is. I remember that windmill dunk because it's burned into my memory watching Derek Williams windmill on Duke. It's a great dunk. But
this is how you win, picking them to lose in the first
round.
Fuck
Arizona, that's right. And I was so happy. And I'm still obviously UB. Can we talk about Bruce Pearl losing to Tennessee in the Bruce Pearl Bowl? Because that was kind of funny yesterday. I'm not gonna lie. Auburn taking loss yesterday to Tennessee. I kind of want. Can we take a second before we get into Auburn at all? Because I do want to talk about Jabari Smith, and I think that this Auburn team. We had a tweet go viral a couple weeks ago. Not viral, but we had that good pickup after Auburn got beat by Arkansas a couple weeks ago.
Dude, you don't beat Arkansas in Arkansas.
Yo, but it was Auburn fans that were coming after me because I put it as an upset because they were 1-point favorites. That's still an upset, and they were the number 1 team in the nation. Like that qualifies as an upset to me.
That's an upset, yes. Absolutely.
And Auburn fans were coming at us because they're like, "This is a fraud team, worst number 1 team in the country." Like they are terrible. Like so many people were saying this. So I want to talk. I like. Are they just this fraud top 5 team, or is it just a high variance team? Like every Bruce Pearl team ever, like all his good Tennessee teams were like, we are great offensive teams. We are dangerous. But if we go cold or it stops working offensively, what we do, we have no answer. That's been Bruce Pearl since I was a little kid. And it just feels like it's that with Auburn again, except they have Jabari Smith who can kind of cover up a lot of those problems in some of these games.
Yeah. Well, let's start with Jabari Smith. Jabari Smith, he probably will go number 1 in the draft this year. He's raised his stock immensely since the start of the season. He's 6'10", freshman forward who basically defends like Ben Simmons. He is one of the best, if not the best on-ball defender in college basketball. But guess what? This dude's hit 60-plus threes already this year. He can shoot. He can create his own shot. Jabari Smith, I mean, he's a 6'10" guard forward hybrid freshman who's 42% shooting from 3. He has the volume to shoot from 3 too. He can create a shot. He can drive. He can do everything, and he's better defensively than he is offensively. His ceiling is terrifying for how good he can be at his ceiling. Now he's still a freshman. He's still young, inexperienced, but regardless. I think this guy has to go number 1 just because of the potential. I mean, we're basically talking about if Ben Simmons could shoot a 3-ball consistently is what Jabari Smith Jr. is.
Chad Holmgren needs to get on his diet plan, bro. Like,
he really does. Yo, Jabari is a freak compared to Chad.
This guy looks like The Rock, and he's a freshman.
What worries me about Jabari, you gave the Ben Simmons comparison, and I do love that. I do agree with that because in the open floor, especially, Jabari is just absolutely terrifying. What worries me about Jabari is the Jeremy Grant potential of Jabari Smith too. I do feel like there's a place where his athleticism is not, and I don't know. Like you don't know how athleticism translates into the league once you see it. He looks like a guy that is transcendent and has the athleticism to make incredible plays. But if he doesn't, with how big he is, he turns into that kind of guy where he's like, I mean, that's still a high ceiling, right? Like that's still Jeremy Grant's getting paid 20-something million a year. But I think he does have the potential you're talking about, which is Ben Simmons level defensively and offensively just can take that next step.
Well, I'll tell you what, would you take Jeremy Grant's offense with a Ben Simmons defense in a player? Because I absolutely
you're right,
would.
I would.
I absolutely would. So even if that's his offensive ceiling, fine. He doesn't need to be your go-to scorer in the NBA. Then he can average just around 15, 18 a game, get his 5-6 rebounds.
He probably still would be your go-to guy because he's getting 3 steals a game and just dunking on you in the fast break.
Because his defense is just unbelievable. Yeah. And the best part about talking about his defense, we're not talking about the guy who leads the team, I think leads the country in blocks at 4.7 blocks a game, Mr. Walker Kessler, the sophomore. 7'1" sophomore. You just don't score on him. I think he's had 3 triple doubles this year where he's had 10 plus points, 10 plus rebounds, 10 plus blocks. You just don't score on the paint on Walker. He is unbelievable, and he's got the size, but a lot of other players in college basketball this year have the size. He's got the wingspan, but he just has the smarts. He just has so much awareness when it's like, I know when this guy's putting up his shot. I know how to block it every time. And that is huge because he's your old school defensive juggernaut big. You look at him offensively, you know what he's going to do. He's just going to try to get the easy dunks, the lay-ins. He's not shooting. He's not scoring mid-range even. But defensively, fantastic. I mean, Kessler, his biggest weakness, he can't really shoot a free throw. He can't really shoot mid-range. But it doesn't really matter. Because he's so good defensively, he can make up for that. And that's the difference between this Bruce Pearl team compared to previous Bruce Pearl teams. Their strength is the defense. They're really not the best offensive team in the world. They're actually not great offensively. And that's my biggest concern with Auburn. Outside of Jabari Smith, you got KD Johnson. But I don't know who's really going to have to score and take over this game because they're really not going to stretch the floor on you. They're inconsistent shooting offense. They're 272nd in three-point shooting percentage this year at 31.7%.
So how are they that? I don't know how these stats work, but how are they that? But then they're 17th in offensive efficiency. So they're just not.
So, I mean, the big thing with offensive efficiency, if you're looking at like the Ken Pom ratings for that, it kind of takes into effect, obviously, the teams you're playing, your opponents, the points per possession, all that.
Okay.
And they will score a lot of points per possession. But when you get to the tournament, I think the big thing for me, especially for Auburn, is you're going to have to know how to create your own shots. You're going to have to know how to score. And that's why I say going into the tournament, the 2 biggest things for me are rebounding and elite guard play. That's what I look for every single time when I pick
It really
teams.
is a tried and true.
In college basketball, shooting is so up and down, right? It's just such a high variance in terms of a team that can shoot 60% one night, 30% the next. It's college basketball. It's inconsistent, and that's why we love this sport. That's why you see the top 6 teams all lose on the same day. So I try to look for things that you can be more consistent with. Rebounding is a big one. And then I love elite guard play because those are guys that you want to have guards where you can rely on if our shooting's not going well tonight or we're just getting dominated down low. Guys who can take over, guys who can force the other team into bad looks, long possessions. Auburn's great at that on the defensive end. Offensive end, a little inconsistent. They're not going to knock down threes. If they get down 10 points early in a tournament game, it's going to be a lot harder for them to come back because you have, one of their best players, Walker Kessler, who I'm not going to say is bad offensively, but he's not really someone you want to rely on. He's not really someone you look forward to. He gets fouled. It's not a guaranteed 2 free throws there. Mm-hmm. And they don't really have that many shooters. Obviously, they have probably the best player in the country in terms of potential, Jabari. But is he the best player right now?
Yeah,
maybe.
Can he take over in a game against a Purdue or a Kansas?
And that's
or
a big
Baylor
ask.
Or somebody else. Yeah,
that's a big ask for a freshman to try to take over.
Honestly, Steve, that's what we're going to come down to in this tournament, right? Like that's the way these teams are shaping up. Yeah. It's going to be all these teams have one kid that can take over a game at any time. Every roster. One of those kids is going to get hot for 6 games. Go ahead, buddy.
No, I'm glad you brought up the inconsistent offense, and I didn't know the numbers here, but this Auburn-Tennessee game is the game I paid the most attention to yesterday. I think I was watching it when I was out with my friends yesterday, and that collapse in the second half. I think to start the second half, they had an 11-point lead.
That's Bruce
I want to say.
Baby.
And then
that is Bruce Pearl.
As soon as they lost it, it looked like the game was over. I mean, there was 10 minutes left, and they just stopped playing once they lost the lead. I mean, obviously they didn't, but the offensive struggles were just so apparent. And like you said, I feel like they tried to lean on Jabari Smith, but it ultimately didn't really work out. And then they just could never get back into the game, it seemed like.
And I think that's the biggest thing, Donnie, right? Is once Tennessee started to go on that run in the second half, you kind of saw, oh boy, each offensive possession was just looking harder and harder and harder for Auburn. Tennessee was making them work, and Auburn just doesn't have those guys that can really just get out and threaten you from three. Yeah, they'll have some guys who will hit them occasionally, but Tennessee was just saying, we're not allowing anything inside the arc. And it was just tough for Auburn to get open looks because they didn't want to settle for the three-pointers because they're not a great three-point shooting team. And another thing, too, I talk about this all the time with college basketball, home court advantage is as real as ever when it comes to college basketball. And once you get momentum, just a little bit of momentum like Tennessee did, that's all it takes, man. That's all it takes for a run. Because next thing you know, you're forcing Auburn into bad offensive possessions. They had a couple turnovers there where Tennessee had easy, fast breaks. And Auburn, I love Jabari Smith, but I don't know if they have the guards that can get them back into a game or completely flip the momentum by hitting a couple big open shots.
Didn't look like it last night.
No, and Tennessee's a good team too. I think Tennessee is one of my. I've loved this Tennessee team all year. I'm just partial. See, it's all emotional too. They're not my. I wouldn't say like my sleeper. I haven't watched enough of it, and that conference tournament time decides a lot of stuff for me. Yeah. I just love seeing kids in pressure moments like that. And this Tennessee team has been pretty tough all year, even in the games that they've lost. So, and they've got some damn good wins on their resume too. So definitely a team I think look for in those. They'll probably be a 4 to 5 seed somewhere around there. I think they'll end up maybe a 3 if they do well in this conference tournament. Can we talk about Purdue?
Let's talk about Purdue.
Honestly, yes,
Mr. Purdue fan.
No. Yesterday, I'm really not putting this against Purdue yesterday because I think that this is just an Izzo Michigan, like the most classic Izzo Michigan State win. This Michigan State team isn't special this year. I think that they're going to be solid in the tournament, solid in the Big Ten tournament, but a big home game against the team who's been the favorite all year in the Big Ten. Izzo got those guys to go out, play hard. They made clutch, timely plays, and it was just a good win for Michigan State. I don't think this is much of an indictment on Purdue. That being said, this is still a team. If things were going to be different with Purdue, isn't this a game that you would have liked to see them be able to pull out at Michigan State, a team that they are much better than? That, like, objectively, you just put them on paper. Purdue should blow out Michigan State at home, away, wherever, in Antarctica. I don't care. Like, they should beat Michigan State, and that's what concerns me about them again.
There's 2 huge concerns for Purdue that I have. Purdue right now, they're first in offensive efficiency. They're 106th in defensive. That is a huge difference. That's a difference you don't want to see. I think in the past 10 years, I think 9 of the 10 years, the championship team was top, I believe, 30 in offensive and defense. Purdue's defense, very bad. And the problem with that is when you have such a bad defense, whoever you're playing, they're just going to do whatever they want. And Purdue is phenomenal offensively. But Jaden Ivey, one of my favorite players in college basketball this year, I think he has as high of potential as a multi-all-star, superstar, take over 25 a game in the NBA. But he can be inconsistent. Yeah. He can be inconsistent. He can have ice in his veins and make some of the deadliest, dumbest shots in the world. But he also can just miss his last 6 trips down the floor, turn the ball over a couple times. He has his ceiling at his best. He's the best player in college basketball. But he also can put your team in a lot of trouble. And that will happen with Purdue sometimes because they're not going to make up for it on the defensive end. Jaden Ivey, he can shoot the 3. He can make his own shot. He can create his own shot. They have 2 nice bigs with Trevion Williams and Zach Edey. Zach Edey's 7'4", by the way, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, no,
you'll know if you watch one Purdue game.
What is up with these teams, man? Like a 7
Dude, I'm telling you, they're growing in my trees.
A 7'4" guy really 3 years ago was like the biggest rarity, and now all of these teams have one of their own. Like 7'4", dude.
Edey's a freak.
But
he's a freak.
This is the biggest concern for Purdue. Trevion Williams, 6'10", great big. He plays a lot bigger than his size too, even though he's 6'10". And Zach Edey, 7'4". He's a monster. Those 2 combine to average less than 2 blocks a game. How is that possible with a 7'4" dude?
That's
How is that possible? He's just not athletic enough. People can get by
Teams
him.
don't even. It's not even. They're not. It's so confusing because teams aren't even scared to go at them. Teams just shoot over them. Like no one's afraid of Purdue defensively. And these are the types of games. Right. The one game I was very sure about earlier in the year with you guys, we talked about Indiana, Purdue, and I was so sure that Purdue was not going to be able to live up to that moment. Indiana fans hyped up in that environment, everything. I was just like, I just don't see it. This is another one of those scenarios. They go into a tough Big Ten environment, road team they're better than, that handles them like that. What does that mean for them in March when they're going to be, if they're in the Sweet 16 here in Chicago against fucking, Tennessee or something like that? I do not trust Purdue in that scenario, just from based on what I've seen just this year, not even past Purdue teams.
No,
just this year.
That's fair. I think a lot of people have that same concern. My biggest, I guess, rebuttal to that would be when Purdue is on, right? When Purdue's offense is on,
it's a show.
You have no answers. You have no answers because there's no team in college basketball that has every part that Purdue has. Zach Edey, not great defensively, but he's 7'4". They just give it to him in the paint. How many teams have a guy who can even match up with that? Just think about this. Chet Holmgren is 3 inches shorter than Zach Edey. Zach Edey towers over everyone. There are a lot of teams in college basketball this year where their bigs are 6'8", 6'9". Right then and there, that's 6-7 inch difference. And Zach Edey knows how to score inside the paint. Trevion Williams, another one, a little smaller than Edey, but I'd say he's more gifted in terms of his post moves and everything. And one of the best, probably, post inside scorers in college basketball. Jaden Ivey at his peak is the best pure scorer in college basketball this year. He can just create his own shot. He's a walking bucket when he's on. And then you got Sasha Stefanovic, who's 6'5", liability on defense, but on offense, if he's a liability on defense, but on offense, if he's open, he can go on a run. We'll hit 7-8 open shots in a row. And no team really has guys who can match up with all of that. You think of that, maybe you get 1 or 2 per college basketball team where you get a big guy down low. Purdue has 2 that can score down low at will. They have an outside threat in Stefanovic, and they have a guy who can play iso ball. They can beat you any which way offensively, and that's why I'm not as concerned as I would be with a team whose defense is as bad as Purdue is. I'm very curious to watch the Big Ten tournament because I want to have hope that I think they can figure it out a little bit, maybe change their style a little bit, make it more defensive centered hope. But I also think Purdue, just play to your strengths. Just make teams say, hey, if you want to beat us, score 90, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to continue to push, and we're just going to use our weapons on offense.
Stevie, you did that perfectly, because I was going to ask you, who are, if we are not looking at Purdue, the Big Ten is so deep this year, as it is always every year. Who is the team? Because I think my gut is leaning towards Wisconsin getting hot and being able to get through the tournament. Yeah. I'm very scared about them in a similar way that you're explaining about Auburn, with relying much on one scorer, and Wisconsin might be one of the most extreme cases of that among teams that can do it.
Yeah, I know.
Right. But what's a bit, Dunny, what were you gonna comment on there? And then just the Big Ten as a whole, like any ideas or any touch points on there?
I was just gonna say this note that Stevie has in here. Who's this? Sasha? I'm gonna butcher his last name.
Stefanovic.
Yeah, 73 3-pointers in 29 games.
Dude, he can shoot. He can shoot, and it doesn't matter if it's wide open or it's contested. He can make it, and that's why I love Purdue offense. I think they can really counter their bad defense because they can attack you in so many ways. But going back to your thing, Jake, I think a Big Ten team that's just slept on is Illinois. I know they lost Io, and I know we love Io.
Can Kofi take over as all these big men that we're talking about and just assert his dominance again?
Kofi's averaging 21 and 10, man.
I know, man.
Kofi really will get his.
Honestly, Illinois does feel like the team that was like they had this last year was the Cinderella year, it was the Renaissance year. Every Illinois basketball back to where they should be. And this year they've kind of had their ups and downs, taken their lumps, but they're still not a team that you want to see at all in March or in the Big Ten tournament. None of these teams want to play Illinois. None of them want to run into them.
that's the thing with Illinois. They don't really have a true weakness. They got good guards
not at
too.
all. No.
They got Frazier. They got Plummer. They're a very good, balanced team. Top 30 in both offense and defense. That's something you want to see going into the tournament for teams who can make a deep run. They can shoot the three. They can play defense. They can score down low. Illinois they just kind of got off to a sluggish start. Everyone kind of forgot about them. I would not sleep on Illinois because I'll tell you what, they're a nightmare matchup for Purdue and a team like Ohio State where they just don't play great defense. And if Illinois can get hot, make that run in the Big Ten, then they can just carry that momentum. And we talked about this last year, a little bit at the beginning of this year. Everyone was saying Kofi Cockburn's probably the best big man in college basketball. And then we saw about a dozen other big men pop up this year out of nowhere. Every team's got a dominant big. But I'll tell you what, Kofi remembers that. Kofi is an emotional player, and Kofi is going to put up his numbers. He's going to get his regardless of who he's up against. I mean, you watch Kofi. It does not matter who he's up against. He is just stronger than them. I don't care if it's a 5-inch difference. He is stronger. He's going to bully you. He's going to push you out of the way. So Illinois, kind of a sleeper team there, even though they're 15th in the country, not a big sleeper, but they haven't really been in the top 10 conversation.
And we know the talent that they have.
Run.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like you said, we know the talent they have. Selfishly, I would love that being here in Chicago. Would love to see an Illinois run. I know it was crazy here last year for the Illinois run. All right, I'm going to hook you up here. We've got Kansas and Baylor yesterday, which is always a great matchup. I don't think this is a panic meter thing for Kansas at all, but I want to hear, and Dunny, you take the lead here too, but I want to hear your thoughts on just these two teams in the Big 12 and who you think is going to come out. And boys, I'll be back in 2 seconds.
Heard.
All right. So the biggest thing here is Baylor, Kansas. This game, I had Baylor as one of my picks for yesterday. Kansas killed Baylor at home. Kansas crushed Baylor their first meeting. Baylor is a solid defensive team. I like Baylor a lot. I don't think Baylor has the type of star guards that they had for their run in their championship last year, but it was a nice bounce back spot for Baylor. They were down, I think, 16-2 early in this game. Kansas was crushing them on the boards, which Kansas likes to do against teams they play this year. And Baylor kind of just found their groove, made Kansas offense just really inconsistent, and was able to pull away. But I'm not too concerned about Kansas. I think the biggest thing for Kansas, Dunny, is that Kansas is just a really balanced team this year. They don't have a true weakness. They're going to ride Ochai Agbaji until his legs fall off for the tournament, because he is their go-to offensive player, and he has potential to be a guy who could probably score 15, 20 a night in the NBA. I really do think he can, because he can score from anywhere. The biggest concern with Agbaji, though, is he's not the best ISO player. And we know in the NBA sometimes, Donnie, when your star player gets in a groove, we're just giving them the ball at half court and the offense is running through him. I don't know if Agbaji can get there, but he's been great so far for Kansas. I think he's averaging, 20 points a game, 5 boards.
20 and a half.
Kansas, though, they don't have that huge big that these other teams have, these other elite teams have.
They're the only team.
But you know what? But I will say, you can put an asterisk right next to that, because they play big. David McCormick, I know he's 6'10", will play as big as anyone. And it doesn't matter who Kansas plays against. They will dominate the offensive glass. They will get extra possessions on rebounding. And that kind of helps. Their biggest weakness is they don't force a lot of turnovers, and they'll turn over the ball a decent amount. And that's a big concern for me in the tournament. I don't want not having extra possessions, right? You don't want those teams that are letting whoever they're playing shoot 10, 15 more shots a game than them. And Kansas doesn't really force a lot of turnovers. They turn the ball over a decent amount. I think 185th in turnovers a game, by like 13 a game. But they make up for that with their offensive rebounding. However, my biggest concern for Kansas is that size going to come into play when they face these 7-footers, these monsters down low? Like you saw against Kentucky. Kentucky dominated them because Kentucky was just bigger than them. And Kansas couldn't really play to their strength of the offensive rebounding extra possessions. They made it very tough for Agbaji to get his shots. It was, I don't know. Kansas, I say this every year. I don't think they're built to win the tournament this year. They're a balanced team. They're a solid team. They're going to probably get a couple games here and there.
This is like the typical, like the epitomization of a Kansas team, right? Like the only really dominant big they've ever had that I can remember is Joel Embiid. The rest of it, I feel like they've always been like kind of undersized, balanced, switchable on defense, have really good guards that can create a lot. Like this is Bill Self's, this is his image and everything. I'm with you though, Stevie. I'm worried about them, just the ceiling that they can reach against these other teams that we've been talking about because of that.
Well, they have a guy who averages 20 a game, Agbaji, but he's not really an ISO player.
Exactly.
And so if something goes wrong for Kansas or they get down early, then it could be a huge concern. And
I don't know if it's just the Kansas threads, but Agbaji, he kind of reminds me of Wiggins, a little smaller. And I don't know. I don't know if it is just, watching him in Kansas, but I feel like this team kind of honestly reminds me of the Kansas team when Wiggins was there too.
And just like Wiggins, he can be very good from the perimeter. I know you were talking about Sasha, who has 73 threes. I believe Agbaji has 81. He's got 81 threes on the year.
He won up them, or two of them, I guess. But
he was on a stretch. Part of that was a couple week stretch he went on where he just wouldn't miss. He just couldn't miss from three. Came back down to earth a little bit lately, but I'll tell you what, if you see him in the Big 12 tournament, maybe start to get hot again, start to hit a decent amount of threes per game, then watch out for Kansas. Because if Agbaji takes that next step to be a guy who they can rely on just 30 a game, Kansas is going to dominate the glass against most teams they play. And the turnovers do concern me a little bit. They don't really have a true point guard. But I don't know. Agbaji, maybe. They got to ride him. If Kansas wants to make a run, you got to ride him until his legs fall off. That's true. Basically how Kansas goes.
Love it.
All right, Stevie. Your Kentucky lost yesterday. After you tweeted, I got a
few teams, right?
Yeah. But you did tweet yesterday about how much you loved Kentucky, and I feel like it still remains even after this game. Yes. As you said earlier on this podcast, even, and we've talked about before, it is hard to go into Arkansas and beat Arkansas. They're a great team. Musselman's got this team playing hard again this year. But I really want to talk about Kentucky because I honestly think I'm picking Kentucky when I put down my bracket, if you had to ask me right now. I just think that they're the deepest team, the most. I think that the balance thing it's pretty good with them. Everybody is, but the highest ceiling of the balance, each of their guys. It's just Calipari really did a great job with this roster, recruiting a great group together. But what do you think about Kentucky and then just the SEC as a whole? Go back touching on Auburn we were talking about earlier in Tennessee. Like, where do you think that SEC tournament's going to go? Because I think that's going to be, honestly, that's the one I'm looking forward to the most of these conference tournaments.
I think the SEC, you can make the argument SEC's been the best conference in college,
which is crazy, right? How wild is that? The SEC,
it's crazy that we're saying that
in basketball,
but you have teams like Kentucky, Auburn that are going to be fighting for one seeds. Arkansas, who has been probably the best team in college basketball in the past 2 or 3 weeks. You have LSU, who at their peak can beat anyone. Alabama, who probably has the 5 best wins of any team in college basketball. But they also have double-digit losses, and they lost to Iona and Georgia. They're maddening. But they're at their peak, they can beat anybody. I think they beat Gonzaga. They beat Houston. They beat who was it? I'll remember it. Whatever. It does not matter. The big thing with SEC is they have a ton of good teams. It's going to just be beating up on everyone in the conference tournament. And I think Kentucky's the best of those teams because of a couple of things. First thing, Kentucky travels well. They don't really have a huge difference in how they perform at home on the road. Yeah, they've lost a few games on the road, but they play well. They're competitive games. They're not getting run out of the gym. Their win in Kansas was one of the most impressive wins all year long, I think. And Kentucky, they're 21st in defensive efficiency, 3rd in offensive efficiency. But I'll tell you what, man, I don't care. I think Kentucky's one of the best defensive teams in the country. You aren't going in the paint on them. They got Oscar Tshiebwe, who is averaging 17 points and 15 rebounds a game.
Oh my God, that's why
he gets his double doubles in the first half. The first half is over and he's got 14 and 12, and I'm like, that's his half stats. I mean, and not only that, but he's so good defensively. 2 steals, a block and a half per game. He's a nightmare for any big man that faces him. I don't care which big man of any of these teams we name. They go up against Tshiebwe. I'm taking Tshiebwe every single time. I don't care. He's a walking double-double would be an insult to call this man. And he's so good at forcing the other big men into mistakes, getting them into foul trouble. You got Ty Washington, the freshman guard, who's probably their best NBA prospect right now.
I love Ty, bro. Who
just doesn't make mistakes. The reason
I want to watch this team.
Ty, he may be a freshman.
Talk about cool names.
It's a great
exactly.
name.
Ty may be a freshman, but he plays like he has 10 years of experience under his belt.
Yeah.
He doesn't make mistakes. He's like a great playmaker.
Literally looks like Chris Paul on the court. It's nuts. It's like a spitting image to me, at least.
He just makes the right decision every trip down the court. And then the other guard, they have the little dude, Shavir Wheeler, is so quick. He's so tough for anyone to get through. And he is probably one of the best playmakers in college basketball. Then you got Kellen Grady. We talked about the other 3-point shooters, Dunny. Kellen Grady, he's 6'5" guard. He's made 83 threes this year. 83. So he can create his own shots. I love Kentucky. They're 5th in the country in rebounding at 40.8. And you know what? That is going up against SEC teams. That's going up against one of the toughest schedules in the country. And they're still 5th in rebounding. And with that schedule, the schedule they played, the out-of-conference games, the SEC, that's just been a juggernaut, they're 39th in opponent field goal percentage. You don't get easy looks against this Kentucky team. And they're 3rd in offensive efficiency with a balanced attack that can really attack you from anywhere. They can stretch the floor. Tshiebwe's not going to score threes, but basically anyone else on the court can. And I'll tell you what, man, I think they have the best defensive team in terms of balanced defense going into the tournament. It's just a nightmare matchup for a ton of teams. I really like this Kentucky team. And my big note for you guys here is an experienced Kentucky team is terrifying.
Exactly.
Calipari usually has the babies he brings into the tournament.
Anytime he has guys that he can bring back, that team is like it's always ready. I think Kentucky's a lock for the Elite Eight no matter what. Like honestly, I think they're an Elite Eight lock, and that's where they'll start having troubles.
I think I'd agree with you there because even their freshmen aren't playing like freshmen. their freshmen are playing like seniors. He's got what I think 3 juniors and a senior that get consistent minutes. Like this Kentucky team is junior, senior, and then you got Ty, who is playing like he's been there for 4 years, which is terrifying. They're a well-coached team, phenomenal defensively, and they're 3rd in offense. Like they're the 3rd best offensive team, but I would hype up their defense before their offense. It's crazy how good this Kentucky team has looked.
Is it fair to say you're most excited about this Kentucky team than any of the other teams we've talked about?
Yeah, I would say right now I think they're the most balanced of any of the teams we've talked about on offense and defense.
So who is the team that we haven't talked about then that you would pick as your favorite coming out?
Right now, if you put a gun to my head and you said who you think's winning the tournament, I would never do that. But yes, I would go Kentucky right now. Well, thank you.
But besides these 6 teams, what about outside of the top 6 that? Because I'm gonna get to the when we go with the ACC. We can go with the ACC here, and I have a couple notes on the Big 12. I want to go to it before we finished up. I'm picking right now. If I filled out my bracket, if it turned out to be it, I would be picking a Duke Kentucky final. And I know that that's ridiculous, but I really think those are the 2 best teams, top to bottom.
That'd be good for college basketball.
Duke has actually been really impressing me so far this year. Duke has been playing.
They have everything.
Very well.
Everything you just said about the balance about Kentucky. It feels like the same thing with Duke. But Paolo is one of those guys that can really take over. Really take over.
Paulo Banchero
he's a
he's
dog.
fun.
He's
a fun player to watch, man.
Talk about being excited, guys, for when they get to the next level. I think
like
his game
super
translates
powered.
perfectly.
He's super
for the
powered
NBA.
Kyle Kuzma. He is
Yeah,
literally
no, I love that
powered
comparison.
Kyle Kuzma. And Kyle Kuzma put up 34 last night. So like super powered version of that is.
I think
pretty
Kuzma
impressive.
would like that comparison as well.
That's true.
Yeah, no, I think Duke is a great pick. Duke was actually one of the teams I have is like on my radars. They weren't in the top 6 here, but they're a team that could make a lot of noise. And I'm going to go back to the well, and I've been going back to this well. I'm going back to Villanova. They don't have the size, which is the biggest concern
on the Big
because
East
a ton of teams have a ton of size. Villanova doesn't have the size, but this team is built exactly how Baylor was built last year. They have 3 guards that can all play.
Colin Gillespie, bro.
Yo,
how does Villanova always have the one guard who's been there for 5 years?
I know, right? It feels like he's been here for 15 years, man.
Gillespie.
They got Archidiakono's younger brother who comes off the bench when they need him, and he can shoot. They always seem to find these guys. You got Gillespie, you got Justin Moore, and then their other guard, I believe, is Daniels. Caleb Daniels.
I forgot about DiVincenzo's run at Nova.
Oh yeah.
And then their 2 bigs, Jermaine Samuels and Dixon. I mean, they're not the biggest guys, 6'7", 6'8", I believe, but they play big. And Baylor, if we remember, was not the biggest team in March last year. Now it may be a little different this year because we talked about all these elite teams have these big men, but Dixon and Samuels, they play big. They can play big. They can stretch the floor. And that's my biggest thing with Villanova. These 5 guys can all stretch the floor. They can all shoot. They can all get their own buckets, and they'll make you run with them. And Villanova, to me, is a team that they started a little slow. They had a couple, bumps in the road. They're finally starting to get more consistent now. They're right up there, 7th in offense, 33rd in defense. They're right up there with kind of the benchmark you want for a championship caliber team. Little smaller than every other team, but I'll tell you what, there's no better trio of guards than what Villanova has right now. That's the biggest thing to me. There's no better trio of guards. Gillespie, Moore, and Daniels. You're just not going to find a team that has 3 guards.
No, that's true, and that's what you need, right? That's the theme of this podcast.
We've come full circle.
It really has.
Exactly. Guard play in the tournament. Tournament.
Well, that's it's guard play, rebounding, and then just don't turn it over. Those are the 3 for me. Those are usually what I look to. You can pick whatever you want, and this year could be a little different because we talked about the size everyone has, but guards
and rebounding, like you said, that's really what it always is down to. The last team we didn't touch on that lost in the top 10 yesterday was Texas Tech, and I think let's take one big more look at the Big 12. I think we've touched on every other conference as a whole. Texas Tech losing yesterday. Stevie, you don't like Texas Tech here. You wrote in our notes. I'm not a big Texas Tech guy either.
But I mean,
go ahead.
The biggest thing for Texas Tech is just I don't think they have a guy who can take over the game. The best player is Bryson Williams, who's fine. He averages 14 and 4. He can shoot well, 55% from the floor, 44% from 3. But Texas Tech wants to play a Texas Tech style of game. They're second in defense. They want to slow you down. They play at a slow pace. They have a very balanced attack. I think they have all 6 guys that they play average around 9 points or higher per game. They can all shoot 20-plus threes on the year. They play basically positionless basketball. Everyone's between 6'5" and 6'8". It's all just kind of these guard-forward hybrids. And they have our boy from Oral Roberts last year, not Atmas, but his buddy who kind of came up clutch against Ohio State, Kevin Obenar, who's actually had a pretty solid role for Texas Tech this year. He's played well. But my biggest thing is I just don't think they have that guy who can take over the game if they need. And if Texas Tech just starts off cold shooting, going to be hard for them to come back to the game with how slow they play and everything else.
Gunny, what was your question that you had for Stevie about Texas and Chris Beard and their whole situation?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to get his thoughts on it. I thought it was,
it's super weird. It's super crazy.
That's what I feel like it really hasn't got as much coverage as it should. Maybe just because Texas isn't as good as some of these teams that we've been talking about today, but still a huge school. Chris Beard, a pretty well-known coach in my opinion. Stevie, I don't know how much you're tuned into Texas basketball this year, or if you have any scoop. I mean,
I had
just crazy situation.
I had much higher hopes for Texas than what they've shown so far this
Me
year.
too.
I would say Texas has been one of the bigger disappointing teams. No one has really kind of improved on last year. I know they lost a few pieces, but the guys who were there, Ramey and Jones, the big guard, they just really haven't jumped up. Texas, we wanted to see them get that Chris Beard kind of DNA style of defense, and it's been okay. It's 17th in defensive efficiency. They're top 30 in both offense and defense, so maybe they make a little bit of a run in the Big 12. But the thing is, too, when I watch Texas, I'm just not that impressed. They don't look like a team that can score with these elite teams. And Texas, to me, is, I don't know. I hate saying they're an early exit, but I just don't see enough consistency out of them. It's almost like Beard, wanted them to adopt that Texas Tech style, but they just look out of sorts.
Not built for it yet. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe give it a couple of years, get that more of the culture in there. But I use the joke with Jim Harbaugh in Michigan for football. He doesn't have his guys in there. Beard doesn't have his guys in there. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah. These guards aren't the best defensive guards in the world. It works. They have a good defense because of the system, but we'll see. I was a little disappointed by Texas. There's a few teams this year that have been
not
major disappointments, but just kind of like underwhelming. That's where I'd have Texas. They're just underwhelming to me. They get string together a couple wins in the Big 12, then everything can change. But for right now,
my guy Trey Mitchell stepped away from the program for a bit, and then his dad was roasting Chris Beard on Twitter. Strange times in Texas right now.
That is literally Chris the epitome of Texas sports, though. Texas
Beard's
athletics. That's what it is.
Too. He's a tough coach for players. So when it gets hard, it gets a lot harder on the players. He is a tough coach, but I don't know. I think Texas, I would throw UCLA kind of in the Texas group where their numbers have looked good. They've played well, but they've just been a little underwhelming when you watch them. And same thing, Texas.
Don't you trust them? Don't you trust UCLA immensely more than you do Texas when it comes to a tournament game?
Absolutely.
That's where the level is.
For a number of reasons. They have the experience. They have the guard play. They have the pure scoring. But I'm just saying that it feels similar to where we had expectations of these could be top 5 teams, and they've just kind of been hovering in the teens for rankings. They're not bad teams by any means. It's just a little underwhelming.
For sure. All right. So I think we did a good, pretty wrap up of all the contenders major-wise. So now we get to talk. I think me and you, how we need to break this down, Stevie, as we go into MAC play and the most important thing of this podcast. Dunny.
Always.
I don't know if you have any thoughts to offer on MAC basketball, but me and Stevie can each give the very convincing arguments about both the Buffalo Bulls and the Kent State Golden Flashes. You can just flip a coin and decide what you think is going to happen. Toledo also at the top right now, 15-3. They're pretty solid. Ohio Bobcats. I'm scared. I'm always terrified of OU.
Terrified.
Stevie, I don't know. I think for both of these teams, because I follow you, I've always followed UB. Obviously, I'm from, where it's it's the whole thing, whatever. I think both of these teams, even UB on a 9-game win streak, Kent on a 10-game win streak now. Neither of these teams, do you still feel confident? Because I really don't feel confident going into the MAC tournament because both of them feel like it's just teetering for one game that it could just all go wrong.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes.
That's the thing with me with Buffalo is I almost not wrote them off, but I was so frustrated by their offensive inconsistency early on where I was like, I can't trust this team anymore. They missed way too many wide open looks. Yes, Buffalo will be doing what Buffalo's done the past couple of years. They dominate the boards. They're playing pretty good defense. They just dominate the glass, but they just couldn't hit water with open shots. And now they're stringing together some wins. Williams is playing better. Segu's playing a lot better. He's playing a lot better these past couple weeks. But I'm going to tell you right now, as soon as I get up my hopes up for Buffalo, they're going to let me down. So I'm just doing what I've been doing for this stretch is I'm just going neutral. I'm like, you know what? I have no expectations. If they change, so be it. But right now,
what do I have to look out? What do I have to look out for in this game? Like if UB is going to take it to Kent State on Friday, and ultimately what they need to do to win the MAC tournament, what does it look like best case scenario for the Bulls?
For UB to win,
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest thing for UB, you got to make your open shots. They're very inconsistent from 3 at times, which is a big thing. UB, play to your strengths, dominate the boards, right? I think they're first or top 5 in college basketball in rebounds per game. Just play to your strength, get extra possessions, and then don't give those possessions away with turnovers. They've turned the ball over 13 times a game this year. That's not great. You don't want that. And they're just not a great free throw shooting team. UB hasn't been a great free throw shooting team for years, but 70% as a team from free throw is concerning, especially when you get into playoff
Jim,
basketball
get him on the line. What is Jim not getting him on the line after practice? Like, what's the deal?
I know. And that's the most frustrating thing, because even back in the past couple of years where UB had good shooters, they still couldn't make free throws. Yes. And it was, you can't have that in postseason basketball, because it's going to be a lot earlier where teams start to foul, or it's going to be a more physical game.
Yeah.
If Buffalo can dominate the boards and just shoot the ball how they have been lately, they're going to be really tough for any of the MAC schools, because they are so good at just getting offensive boards, getting an extra look on offensive end, but they got to make their open shots.
So what I will say is, I think your UB team is probably the most one of the most talented. OU might be the most talented team.
Yeah.
But I think UB is pretty much up there, right there with OU. But we've been talking about teams built for the tournament, built to win in March. Kent State this year actually is pretty much the perfect build to win a conference and win a team. Defensively, just a menace, which is I've never seen from a Rob Senderoff team. Usually these Kent State teams, especially the good ones the last couple of years, are high flying, high variance, 3-point shooting, like blocks, turnovers, steals, but not really a consistent defensive team. This team is a dog defensively. Like, they muck these games up. And then you get a dude like Sincere Carey, who could be a scorer in any – he could be a scorer in any conference in the country. The dude, he put up 42 earlier this week. He put up 20-something last night. They've got talent all over on this roster. It's a pretty deep team. I'm just really bullish on Kent just because of the defensive ceiling that I've never seen them have in the last couple of years. But Carey is one of those guys, when you look at like a MAC tournament and someone getting hot, he's a guy that could put up 25 points plus 3 nights in Cleveland, and then it's a wrap, and we get a tournament bid again. Yeah, that's what concerns. But what concerns me is that if he's not going, they are cold. Like, he not only is their best scorer, he is their best creator. And if he's not going at all, which could very well happen against a UB team who is going to give Kent a lot of problems athletically on Friday, no matter what. That's what worries me. Like, UB is honestly their worst matchup. They do not match up with UB well. As we saw earlier at Alumni Arena, UB kind of controlled that game from the tip. Like, it was pretty much a wrap.
Right. And I think UB's kind of similar with Jonathan Williams, where he is the offense that goes through Jonathan here. And it's pretty crazy, too, because coming into the year, I had high expectations for UB. And then I was kind of like, all right, I think Ohio and Toledo might just be better. They might just be better. Sometimes that just happens.
Toledo's just nasty, bro.
Toledo's always nasty. But I thought Ohio and Toledo probably had the most balanced starting fives of any team in the MAC, probably the best overall teams. But I'll tell you what, Jake, Kent State and Buffalo are the 2 hottest teams in the MAC right now. Something's got to give on March 4th, but regardless of what happens on March 4th, they're the 2 hottest teams. And in these mid-major conferences, you just ride the hot teams. I think we're seeing each
other in Cleveland. I think there's no doubt.
I would love to see that. I would love to see that.
We saw it a couple years ago. We did see it a couple years ago we've seen it a couple times. Dunny, what are your thoughts on anything hearing about the MAC? Any MAC thoughts at all from this? I want to see what you gathered.
No, I need to see this face off now, dude. You guys
You
just
do need to
got me
watch
all
this.
jazzed up.
Nah, bro. High level MAC games are like as good as any college basketball game you could watch. Like, and Kent and UB have been these, especially these like the last 5 years when UB has been at their peaks. Kent has played them so tough almost every single game. Like, it'll be a good game no matter what. That place will get electric too. Kent shows out for the UB games.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure the train wreck group chat will be popping that day.
Oh, I'm gonna be talking so much shit on Friday, bro. They're gonna be so mad.
It's gonna be great. And I mean, besides the MAC 2, I just can't wait for all these conference tournaments. I try to tell people this every single year. Everyone gets hyped for the March Madness tournament, which is you should be. It's probably the best couple weeks in sports. Watch the conference tournaments.
Yeah.
You will see some of the most entertaining basketball, good or bad. It could be horrible quality. It could be fantastic because not only, you're going to watch the SEC, you're going to watch the ACC, the Big 12, you're going to watch the big ones. Watch a Northeastern game. Watch a Summit game. Watch a SWAC game because I'll tell you why. The teams in those tournaments, it's win or lose. It's win or go home. You're not getting an at-large bid.
That is those kids' dreams, like on the line. It's more. They're
playing to get in. They're playing to get waxed by 50 to Gonzaga in the first round. They're playing to get into the tournament, and it's such electric basketball. You'll see some of the best moments, some of the craziest comebacks, and you'll hear of players' names that you've never even heard of because they're playing for a team like, let's say, Bellarmine, and then that guy drops 30 a night in the tournament, and next thing you know, he's a staple household name. Max Atmas made his name from the Summit League tournament. He took over all those games, and then that's where he got the upset over Ohio State and then Florida in the next round. And I'll tell you what, guys, I would not have predicted Oral Roberts to get to the Sweet 16 if it wasn't for watching the Summit tournament. That's where you find the Cinderella teams because it's one thing to look at the numbers, look at the stats, the records, the metrics, but it's another thing to have the eye test for these teams that no one's heard of because you know what? Those kids know that too. They know that, hey, no one's talked about me. No one knows how good we are. That's where you see these stories, these Cinderella teams. And I absolutely love it. The conference tournaments is the best. You'll see a ton of picks for me next couple of weeks of conference tournaments, opinions on games. I'll be losing my mind on a game you didn't even know existed or probably find a stream of. We got another guy in Trainwreck now, Troy Van Dam at TV Dinner 14.
Dinner. Great. What a great name, bro. That is awesome. Incredible.
Name. TV Dinner 14. Mint. He's been pumping out college basketball articles left and right. I'm hoping to get him on a couple live streams soon because he knows as much about the sport as anyone.
We need him here.
He's going to be tuned into all the games. Going. I would love that. Get him here, get a little March Madness, even talk about some conference tournaments. We can do a recap of the at-large teams, the bubble picture. He knows as much as anyone. I can't wait for these next few weeks, guys. It's going to be fantastic. Watch the conference tournaments. I know March Madness is coming up in 2-3 weeks. Watch the conference tournaments, people. You won't be disappointed. It is electric basketball.
Yeah, and as we did it last year, we kept it rolling. March Madness right into the NBA playoffs. Yep. We'll do it again this year. It's going to be a
great time of
NBA
year.
Playoffs. The Eastern Conference playoffs.
The Eastern Conference play. You better have me on for the Eastern Conference playoff preview because I can't wait.
I don't think I'm going to be able to breathe. Like
I haven't been this hyped for the first round of NBA playoffs in a long time.
Watch.
Yo,
Donnie, I can't wait. Like I said
to you guys before, as a Cavs fan, I've never seen a playoff series without LeBron James. I don't know what playoff basketball feels like. Like I don't know what a real playoff game feels like. Donnie has just been going through like iterations of different Celtics teams in different playoff scenarios.
Feel something special brewing with this one.
I do. Listen, we've been high on your boys the whole time. I have a bit of news for you guys though. From a personal basketball level, I unretired yesterday from pickup basketball from 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, before COVID was the last time I got in a pickup run. Got in yesterday.
What was the stat line looking like?
I compare my game. Well, so it's a nice, beautiful thing. Dunny, I think you can do it in Boston. I don't think we have it in Buffalo yet, Stevie. But it's this app just called Just Play, and you just find pickup runs around the city, pay like $10 to go rent the gym out. And you can just go and just play. And I was like, I had no idea what to expect going in, but it was just like a normal pickup run. Like guys were pretty decent. We were all about the same skill level, whatever. You play games to 7, so everybody gets on the court. You know, you switch it up and everything. I said yesterday my comparison is like Lakers Rondo. Like I was a very inconsistent shooter. My shot's broken. Haven't shot in like 6 months. I did hit a game winner though in one of those 7-point games. Hit a 3.
Let's go.
So that was good. But I'm in most pickup basketball. I'm good for mostly assists and some defense. So I'm on Lakers Rondo level, but unretired. Okay. I'm back in it. My knees felt good today, so that was the plus. That was my big news. It is. But I do think in Boston they have this thing too. So if you're looking, Dunny, at anything, it was like literally the most relaxed pickup run I've ever been to. Like super easy.
Yeah, I actually have an old man league that I used to play in because my dad played in it. An old man league. I used to play in high school, and I think I'm rejoining Tuesday. You should get some run in. So,
dude, there's nothing better than an old man pickup run. I had one in Kent.
It makes you feel so good.
Oh man, it's true. It does.
The best part about those pickup games is like after possession, everyone walks to the other side of the court.
Yeah.
The old men leagues are the
yelling
best.
at you.
There's no back. There's no transition basketball.
No. My favorite.
Yeah, we play like side to side because we have hoops on the side in this gym. We don't even play full court. Well, it's technically full court, but it's a short full court.
That's funny. Yeah, we had kids that would because if the old guys needed some guys and you were shooting around, they'd ask you whatever, but you'd have to like earn their trust because like if you some kids start like running around doing too much, they're like, nah, get out of here. Like this is not what we're here for. We're not here to be running up and down the floor, bro.
They're like, did you just do a reverse layup? Get out of the gym.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are you playing full court defense? What are you doing, man?
There's no such thing as a fast break. No such thing. Not at all. But that's it. My knees feel good today, guys. I feel like we're coming back. If that's my worst day, that's a good start. That's what you guys think. You know, it's true.
The only thing I'll say here at the end is, after what we've been going for a little over hour 15 here, after listening to Stevie Richardson here, forget about John Rothstein, forget about Dan Ravel. This dude knows his college hoops better than anyone on the internet. I think. Does. And, get used to it because we're going to have these college shows coming down the line. Of course, we're still going to be doing NBA shows weekly. We're going to be it's that time of year, college basketball shows weekly.
The best time of the year.
Tournament games. Then we get into the March Madness. March is here. Stay locked in with us, NBA and college going forward. Can't wait.
Let's do it.
I'm telling you guys, got to bring Troy on here. He's an encyclopedia with college basketball. We'll have some great conversations going forward. I can't promise another 15-2 upset call in March Madness. Can't promise that, but we'll see. We'll see what the future holds.
We're gonna try.
Well, yeah, you set a high standard, Stevie, but we have to. We got to try to live up to it with something. I am picking right now, though. I'm telling you, I'm going Kentucky Duke in the national championship right now.
That would be. I'll tell you what. That would be the perfect send off for Coach K's final season. As much as I dislike Duke and all the everything about the Duke program, the fans, whatever.
Kentucky would be the perfect team.
Kentucky would be the perfect team. It'd be poetic to have final year Duke versus Kentucky in the final. That'd be electric. That'd probably be the best ratings we'd have for a championship in a long time.
By far. All right, follow us at Happy Hour Hoops 1. Subscribe to the podcast everywhere. Like someone said that made a great point on the podcast that I was listening to the other day. Like, why do we say subscribe to where you listen to podcasts? Because if you're listening to this podcast, you know where you listen to your podcast. So wherever you're listening to this, that's like you just do that. So that'll work.
Yeah.
Poor Jake, Stevie, Dunny. Have a great day, folks. Enjoy your basketball. We got a basketball marathon, NBA basketball marathon today. So tune on ABC, ESPN. Great games all day. Have a good weekend, folks.